Hey, everybody. Welcome to November edition of Scripting the Book. Today, we are going to talk about Little Women by Louisa May Alcott and a varied group of the adaptations that she has had done of her work. I think Little Women is probably her most popular series that she's done that was turned into a novel. So fantastic. So we're going to talk about the book and the 1994 version, the PBS version, and then the most recent 2019 version of the book. And if anybody has seen the older ones and wants to throw in their 2 cents about it, you're more than welcome to do that. So let's go. We've got my regular co-host Natalie and Ben with us, and today our regular guest host Zara, and another guest host today, Tiffany. So welcome, you guys. We'll go around and let everybody introduce themselves really quick, and then we will get started on our discussion. So, Natalie, take it away.
I look down and drink my water, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what? You're first. I am Natalie Locke, or Writer Locke, depending on which website you're on, I guess. I do a lot of flash fiction and public domain narration as I'm trying to find, I would say my voice, but actually I'm trying to find many voices. So hopefully with multiple targets, I hit one of them. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. You can just see that whenever that happens. And because of flash fiction, I want to steal what Nia said earlier, genre hop and genre mix. So that's always fun.
Nice. Go ahead, Ben.
All right, and I am Ben Pick. I am on Writing to Write every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I give questionable writing advice through writing metaphors. Except tomorrow, I'm actually doing an hour earlier at 6 o'clock. I'm going to be doing a productivity sprint and cover reveal. So my next book will be coming out, and hopefully before our next scripting the book, we will have my second debut novel. Second novel will be out for publishing. Anyways, yeah, I'm also on self-publishing tips and tricks with SD Houston and Morgan Lee, where we interview people across the industry for various advice for self-published authors.
Nice. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I am Tiffany, TLRS Lifestyle on all the interwebs. I have a YouTube channel under the same name where we stream on Thursday nights. PJs and Scribbles, come hang out with us. We have a good time. Today we are going to be doing a birthday stream because my birthday is tomorrow. So if you are free today, I think like in 3 hours, come hang out with us. We're going to be playing movie trivia. It's going to be fun. And I have a Kindle Vella called Come Find Her that's published on Amazon. Please go check it out. Read it, love it, like it, give it thumbs up. And then you can come over to my Ko-fi page and join my book club. So thank you.
My name is Zara Hoffman. I'm the self-published author of 7 books, but I only have 6 in my hand: a young adult paranormal romance trilogy, a new adult sci-fi romance trilogy, and a standalone young adult dystopian romance that came out on the 7th. Yeah, the day before Election Day. I'm like, whatever date that was, but it was the Monday before that Tuesday. I am one half of the Writish podcast, where we talk about all things writing related, from shiny new idea through publication and marketing, regardless of what track you are on: self-publishing, indie publishing, or traditional publishing. And lastly, I am the founder of Inimitable Books, LLC, a small publishing company dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices without pigeonholing authors into writing about their trauma.
Nice. And you are on my channel, Nia, the Vixen Of Fiction. I stream regularly at 7 p.m. on Tuesday nights, and I also am doing a lunch write-in, so you can come hang with us on Fridays at noon. Don't know how many I'm going to do. I usually only do them during like NaNoWriMo and Camp Nanos, but we'll see. Thank you guys for coming. You guys ready to get right into it with Thank you. Yes, they're all linked below. Let's do our dislike, neutral, like, and love on the book. We're going to discuss the book first. So let us know who is a dislike on Little Women. Dun, dun. Oh, we got one. And he's trying. I love it. All right. Who is a neutral on the book? Who is a like on the book? And who is a love on the book? Nice.
But
I'm a
And
neutral to like, I will say.
I'm between the like and the love. But the fact that I was in the play pushes me into the love because it's kind of like a special place in my heart.
Who did you play?
Type of conversation.
Who did
Who'd
you
you
play?
play?
I played Amy.
Oh.
Flashed everybody in my high school. It was great.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
It was
That
an
is
accident. There was a moment I was supposed, like, we had the hoop skirts, and I was supposed to run down the stairs right after Meg has the baby and be very excited and want to start sketching. And they told me 18 times, run down and don't flop. And then opening night, I was excited. I was in character. I ran down, I flopped, and thank God there was a table in front. Is just hanging over the table.
Ooh, you were warned and still got excited. That's fine.
She was in character.
I'm not gonna lie. For me, it was probably when I was reading this back in middle school. It was probably a love. Rereading it as an adult, it drops down to like, not because necessarily the quality has changed or anything like that, but I think reading it as a younger person, I could relate so much to Joe in particular that I was like, whoa, look at this person who has this temper and she's got to keep her temper closed in. She wants to like be doing all the boy stuff. I wanted to climb trees, but I also wanted to write. So, I'm like, I literally related to that, and I was the oldest of several siblings, so I understood the whole sibling dynamic. And there was a favored daughter who was just precious and beautiful, and there was me with my mom would try to put me in like the long white socks with the buckle shoes, and I'd be the one that comes back with the socks are filthy dirty. So there were so many things that as I was reading it as a kid that I was like, I like her and I want to write things and nobody gets it, So that's more of it. Reading it as an adult, it just gets a little old fashioned, and there's no way around that. As things get older, they can still remain classics, but the style becomes old fashioned. The stories drag out. Like, is there really even a climax? It doesn't follow like regular story progression that we're used to now. It's just a series of events, kind of. Some events are more exciting than others. So it used to be a love. It has now moved to a like. I don't think it's ever going to move out of the like because it's still got so much value in it to me. And I think also for other young people that are coming into reading, and it's something that neutrally, as books are not all schools want to make all books available. I feel like it's something that still a lot of young girls can relate to if they have to read classics.
Yeah.
It's
I
not a
really
bad
want to hear Ben's point. I want to hear someone dislike. Like, I have like to actually dislike it. Ben, please share.
You're on mute.
Are you muted? Muted. And we're all the good stuff. He's like,
There we
"Dang, that
go.
was it."
All right, I fixed it. Yeah, so
He comes on and
everything that-
goes, "That's all I got to say about that." Say what?
yeah, somebody just cut out the mic and it's Forrest Gump all over again. But yeah, everything that Nia said is why I don't like it. Like, each chapter feels like an episode of a sitcom where nothing really happens. And yeah, I get it's a milieu of a slice of life of a lower middle class family during the Civil War, but like you said, there are parts of it where there's nothing that actually happens, or the story wouldn't be helped or hindered by just cutting out entire chapters or entire, events that occur. And I do recognize the importance of the novel. I can understand how you certainly relate, especially if you have other sisters or if you feel that you are the personification of any of these sisters. Like that gets a much more personal note to the story. And I just didn't really relate to the characters in that way. So it was a really tough read for me.
Did you relate to like any of the guys like Lori or nah?
Well, yeah. I can understand being a good friend with, you know, a group of sisters or whomever, or just being friends with a bunch of girls or doing whatever. But I felt I definitely related to him at first, where you have, you know, pining after a girl who isn't interested in him, and that's something that's very relatable. But then it just felt like he did a switch over to.
Yeah, I wish there was more.
Are we doing spoilers or?
Spoilers for the book. Yes, we can do spoilers for the book.
Yeah, so you do a switch of like from one sister to the next, and I just felt like really, really creeped out about that, and I just never got over that.
Especially because she was the youngest.
11. Like, she was 11 when they first met.
Yeah, and everything about that, if you think too hard about the details, is still.
Yeah,
but I will say
I also have to remember that was not uncommon for that age group.
This is the Civil War times, and that's
probably
fine.
A smaller age
to watch someone grow up and then go, hey.
It was just weird for me. I mean, it happened in some Jane Austen books too, and because like, you know, I can tell myself like, okay, it's not as like wildly not okay. Like if in fact it was almost like, yeah, that's fine back then. So it was like, I know it's different, but to me, like as a modern reader, even when I read it back in middle school, I might have read it like at the end of elementary school actually on my own because it wasn't assigned reading, where I was like,
this was my first time reading it and watching. I've seen the 1994 or no, writer version. I thought it was 94.
Yeah, 1994.
And I saw that by force because my older sister was bigger than me and could control the TV. And she loved it. And so just by that sheer force, I didn't love it. Of course, this was also a time where I didn't like musicals. I didn't like anything that wasn't set in the present. Like I was into contemporary a lot. And something relatable. I didn't want to use my imagination much. I was lazy. And not that people who like contemporary, whatever. All right, y'all know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about myself, not anyone else. So I just didn't like it. And I think by having that exposure to it of like, it's either go do something in your room by yourself, like be bored, or you can sit here and just have this playing in the background and be semi-social. And I think that's where my distaste and so now reading it and consuming it again, I can see the allure. But at the same time, for me, I think the reason it's not a love is because the sisters were too close for me, to do everything. They all had their different things. Like there was writing, there was drawing. Oh, and by the way, as a writer, it was such a struggle to see that manuscript destroyed over and over, every single rendition. And I'm like, do you have to? Do we have to do that again?
It does not matter how many times I see it.
It's like
cuts every time. I'm like, I know there's a tragedy that happens with Beth, but the write-up.
The tragedy for writers is the manuscript.
And every time I get more and more angry at Amy.
I
know. It's like
this little brat.
Okay, when we get to it, there is a version of it where I am like, you're still a brat and you still shouldn't have done it, but like I'm kind of feeling nicer towards you that you did it. But the book is not that version.
No, the book is not that version.
I was like furious with Amy in the book for doing that.
The siblings, though, other than that big fight between Joe and Amy, there was just, I'm like, seriously? Are you kidding me? My sister dragged me by my hair from the living room to a bedroom. We had brawls and stuff before, or it was just or just the normal sibling thing. Never mind full out fight. Let's just talk about the normal sibling thing where you see them comfortable and you snatch the blanket or something. Siblings do that where it's I gotta disrupt this for some reason. Like there's just an itch you can't scratch. I don't know what it is. And I didn't see any of that. You know, like have one of them petting one of the kittens, which I did like the kitten aspect. Kept me going. But like have them petting the kittens and the other one going, you don't deserve them. They're mine. You know, or something. Like have some type of thing.
More conflict between
yeah, like
siblings.
show
We
them
still love each
siblings.
other, but
Yeah,
more
because I
conflict.
just didn't feel they were too close. You know, like they were too close.
Like Jane, like the Bennetts in Pride and Prejudice, like they're sniping at each other. They're like,
yes,
"You're so dumb." Like I'm not gonna put up with this.
Banter.
Like, you know,
completely 100%. And even even though I know Bridgerton's a totally different way, the sibling relationships there was banter, and I think maybe that's what it was missing. Like the closest we got to banter was between Laurie and Joe, but that went a different level with it, not.
Well, like jumping ahead, the adaptations I think leaned more into banter that might not have been there in the book because like they were made later, and you know.
That's my exposure of like it was a dislike, and then it became neutral of like I recognize it or whatever, and then I've actually consumed all versions that I could because I'm 1933 and 1949 versions. I'm sorry. You can't cast an adult and call them a kid, okay? It just it doesn't work with me. No matter how many years it's supposed to span and stuff. But either way, but it's grown to like. I won't say I won't reread it, but I at this time I don't foresee it.
So. I'm like Nia. I went from love because I was like completely saw myself as Jo March, and then like as I've gotten older, it's like I still like it, but I don't like as strongly identify with it. So it's not. I don't think it's love anymore.
All right. Well, let's ask our resident Amy.
Yeah.
I agree. Amy throwing the book and destroying it. Yeah, that's not so great.
It's fun to act out, but yeah.
I think for me though, reading it, even when I was younger, and in all fairness, I haven't reread it in quite some time, but I always looked at it, I guess, because of the time frame that it was written, that even with the sibling relationship, it's more about the aspiration of what femininity and the female experience could be than necessarily what Louisa May Alcott was experiencing in that time frame. And so I think that is why it kind of holds a little bit of a place for me, is because like I always look at it as like if you can think it and dream it, then you can make it a reality. And if you think about, where women were when she wrote it to where women are now, very vastly different. And it is closer to what Jo aspires to be and what Jo aspires to have than necessarily where we were. And so that's kind of why I think it still somewhat holds true. I do agree that a lot of the relationships, a lot of the dynamics are a little dated. But for that aspect, it still holds as a classic to me.
Yeah, but a lot of it was very forward for her time because a lot of the things that she took were things from her own life, and her parents were kind of like bucking that a little bit, pushing back on that trend of girls are in this box and girls must be like debutantes and be this, and they were letting their girls, if they wanted to, be a little bit more free and letting Louisa write and express herself through writing because she had such a hot temper, so there was a lot of her in Jo as well. And she was, I think in her time, and she's literally, she's older. She wrote the teenagers were during the Civil War, but she was already an adult during that time. So she was pushing it also a little bit like, hey, what if girls were like this? What if girls were allowed to be like this? What if they don't want to get married? But she ended up having to let Jo get married because they were like, this girl has to get married if you want us to do this book, so she's like, fine. And then she didn't put Jo with Laurie, and crushed my little soul, even as a middle schooler.
I actually love that fact. and
No,
everything.
I
did
didn't
too.
like it. If they would have both remained single, I would have been happy.
I mean, okay,
But
I would have
because
liked her to
she
remain
lost
single
with
if that was an option. But I also like her not ending up with Lori. I
Yeah.
think the weird part of it is that he ends up with Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
one
because
of those.
poor Amy
Yeah.
didn't really get to explore in my mind. Like I wanted Joe got to experience the world, and Amy got to experience the world in the sense of she got to travel through Europe. But like when
Yeah.
it came to guys, like there was what God, what was his name? Not Edward.
Which one? The guy that Joe ended up marrying?
No.
No.
Amy,
Um,
Amy, the guy she ended up seeing who was at a picnic at Lori's or whatever, and she met him through Lori, and
I don't
then
know
she
why I
ran
have
across.
I have George in my head, but I know that's wrong.
It starts with an E, and then his last name's like I forget what it was, but either way, like there was that quick thing, and then Lori was like, "Hey, don't talk. No, give me a chance. Like, don't say anything to that guy until whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like, give me a chance." And I just, it was a big jump for Lori. Like that was a huge skip. It was like all of a sudden he hasn't seen her in a few years, and he's like, "Oh,
Wait a minute.
okay, I know how to say a part of the family." And I just yeah, I didn't like that jump. But then also I wanted every girl to see their growth and see them like experience life.
Sorry, Nia and I were clicking on this comment at
We're
the
like,
same
that's
time.
No, great minds think alike. Yeah, I think it probably was Elliot. Sounds about right.
I think it was. That rings about.
Yeah, I knew it was an E. Okay, I can do Wheel of Fortune with this. I just can't complete the puzzle.
I just like he's so not important in the overall thing that I think my brain was like, yeah, that guy. Like it's
we know it. He's there, and there's a reason why, and slight change. But there's a reason why he's not even mentioned in some movies.
Yeah.
So
true.
Or renditions, not just movies, because we are talking about a PBS show too.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't necessarily want Joe and Lori to end up being married, but I just didn't want anyone else in their friendship mix, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like I just wanted them to stay exactly. But me as a middle schooler, this is where my brain went. I'm like, why are you gonna marry Amy? She's the worst. And why are you gonna marry this old dude? That's where middle school brain me was at. I was like, I don't get it. Why is this happening? Just stay friends forever. Like be BFFs and
we almost like out. I was just going to say that we knew almost nothing about the German guy except for the fact that he was a professor and that he criticized Joe's work.
Oh God, yeah, foot and mouth moment.
Yeah, so I was like, don't like you.
I don't know. I still don't think I pronounce it correctly, but Schadenfreude, the German thing where it's like you get a little fear out of someone's like misfortune. Like,
yeah,
I always get a little bit of that when it's like, yeah, you did that.
Yeah. Okay. For me, overall, I think the book Little Women, it's first off called Little Women, but I think rather it should have been called Book of Joe. Okay. And because I wanted a taste of all of them, of all of the sisters. They're also different. I think having multiple storyline situation, and they did kind of good with it, but it was still at the end of the day Book of Joe. Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted others and everything. I was like, the only taste of Beth we got was through Joe's eyes. That's why there was that confusion of why is Beth longing and everything. And it was for happiness, not for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Joe needed someone that was going to challenge her. Lori pretty much said yes to everything Joe wanted. No, I thought Lori was like he challenged her, but it was like
in a way that
it was a random situation, not a let me reach here, try harder. It was a butting of heads.
It wasn't like constructive criticism or like, once you get over the blow to your pride, you realize it's constructive criticism. But, at first you feel like it's like this and it just, it felt like very one note, like it wouldn't be able to go anywhere.
That's where I think of the sibling banter. that you guys were kind of saying it was lacking was more so with Joe and Lori than
Same.
necessarily any other character. And I think that's what kind of killed Lori's chances. He was friend zoned from the beginning.
Yeah, friends.
Yeah, from the start.
Like, she could not, no matter how close they were, she could not get out of her head
Right.
that you're my best friend, you're like my brother. She just could not make the transition. It was a done deal, unfortunately. And I think that the times when he did buck what she wanted was in times of like nurturing her, like he wanted to be a caregiver. And that's where I feel like, okay, maybe Amy was a better fit for him, because Joe wanted to be very much more independent. Like, I feel like he supported her in her writing, but she could have pretty much written anything and he'd have been like, oh, it's fine, but don't you want to do these other,
I think he and Amy are like an okay match. It's just the fact that he watched her grow up and also did it like after, oh, your older sister rejected me. I think it's like he didn't have what preceded it. Like
I think if it was
of how they knew each other first, I feel like, yeah, that's a good couple.
We needed to be shown like him starting to notice Amy before Joe rejected him. Like, and then I think that would make it a little more
acceptable,
pure.
Or some type of connection, maybe.
Yeah, like maybe they had a one-on-one and he's like, wow, you've grown up. You're not the kid I thought you were, and stuff.
It just feels like he displaced his emotions, and then it's like, oh, that's what the marriage is built on. And it's like,
where I think that Amy maybe possibly had some little bit of a crush on him, always looking up to him.
I think so.
But
and that's really awkward too, because it's really awkward too, because Beth also had a crush on Lori, and then she got taken out of the picture. So
spoilers.
No, we're in spoilers. Like, if you have
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah,
I
know.
No, I'm just thinking of the episode of Friends where
before we go on to the other
for Joey.
I have thought of that episode ever since we started talking.
So before we go on to the other mediums of Little Women, let's talk. You guys want to talk about the big things that did happen, because most of it was slice of life, kind of like this is just these people's lives. But some big things did happen. There was the book burning, which broke my soul. There was the loss of Beth, which took so long. Like, I just felt like you felt it coming. You're just like, when's this going to happen?
It was just like the dread of knowing it was coming and it looming over everything. So anytime that they were happy, I'm like, is it now? Is it now?
Yeah, as someone who never really got into it, I knew there was a sister that died. I just didn't know which one. And so when Amy fell into the ice, I'm like, oh, the young one. And stuff.
She did burn those books.
Yeah.
That was I feel like that was a very smart move to put that in there, because did we not all hate Amy after she burned that book? And to see her almost die, it's like, okay, I guess I don't totally hate her.
It's like, okay.
Oh no, I still
acting out, and like that still wasn't okay. And when I was younger, I still hated her for that, but I no longer hated her entirely as a human being because she did it, because I was like, oh, she like almost died, which makes me sound awful, but please remember, I was an elementary school kid who like identified completely with Joe, and if someone had burned my book, I also would have been like really mad. So,
but I mean, there was that. There was for me, the book burning is the most prevalent thing. We are like, no. But then I did enjoy Aunt Marge. It's not Marge. Margaret. March. Thank you. I guess I got Harry Potter on the mind or something. But I enjoyed her relationship and kind of what factors she played in, but I definitely wanted more from her. Like, I wanted a sassy grandma age woman sometimes. So Beth was the one who held them together.
Oh, sorry.
And then she was the glue. When she died, the sisterhood sort of fell apart. I didn't feel that. I felt it was just time. They were all old enough. They needed to kind of have their own things.
Like, I think it happened at the time when it was going to happen anyway. Like, Amy not being there I don't know, something about that bothered me, even though they were like, no, let Amy stay and do what Amy's doing. She's living her life. Something about that never really settled right for as close as they were when they were.
Wait, her going away while Beth had scarlet fever.
Yeah, and yeah.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
and then
But then
Beth
not
got
telling-
better, like over the
Not
scarlet
telling
fever.
her when she died.
Better, but yeah, I know it really it was rough in the situation, because I wasn't sure if the father was gonna live. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure when which daughter would die and when and stuff. And so for me, I was just like, I know it's gonna be rough, but every single time something happened, it was like, let it happen, like kind of a get it over with, like which is a feeling I remember from when my grandmother had cancer and she was in hospice, and it was like days, and I was like, I don't want her to suffer anymore, just go. Like I at my 10-year-old me dealing with that. And so those emotions came back of like, I know this is going to happen, just let it freaking happen so we can say goodbye, instead of this constant preparation mindset of it's happening. But having the death, like I related to Amy a little bit of the death happening, and she shouldn't go home, because I was in Germany when my grandfather died, and it didn't make sense for me to fly home, or even the whole family to fly home, even more so. So I missed the funeral.
And I think especially back then, it just would have been so much harder. But because there was so much build up to it, that there would have been time. But it's not that, oh, I'm mad because she wasn't there. It just felt odd, but odd on purpose. Like, this is where they are at in life now. It's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that, you just got to come to grips with it. Like you said, sometimes this is the way it's going to be. And middle grade me was like, yeah, I guess sometimes this is just the way it's, you know what I mean? It's like, so there were like, in small ways, there were life lessons that it's not going to be, everybody's going to be there. And it's just going to, sometimes it's not going to be like that. You know,
Yeah.
Like, it
it's going to
made
be where
sense, but it
people are
was
separated.
sad. And it was sad to me that they weren't all together when it happened. But it also makes sense. And
Yeah. I will say, I loved that Amy named her child Beth. Like the ending of the book of like children being had and stuff like that, or even fulfilling career goals and such like that.
in the kind of like epilogue that.
And then that was the most wholesome for me, and of Beth was named because Spencer is named after my grandfather, the one that whose funeral I didn't. So I definitely connected with that.
I like Joe cutting her hair. I thought that was
that was a big one.
That was great.
And I was constantly doing math in my head. They're like 25 cents for limes, $25 for hair. And I'm like, I'm trying to compute to today's dollars right now.
It's like, how much is that? Has anybody done a fan fiction or retelling? I can confess that one of my stories is a retelling of this, which is how I realized when I went back to go reread it. Because like I said, it's something that I loved as a middle grade kid. So I'm like, and I would tell my daughters these stories, and I realized I was only telling them the highlights. There's so much space where nothing happens, and I'm like, that doesn't work today. So doing a retelling with the little things that happen, I actually had to create a bigger story. And it's more,
you can also flush out the relationships that we're like, that came out of like,
and that is another thing. And I get more time to work on the quote unquote Joe and Amy, or not Joe and Amy, but the Lori,
Joe, Amy, Lori.
Yeah, I get
not
more time
really
to work on
like,
that. And I can flesh that out, but I have to, because of the way that kids read books now and doing it in little bits of series, I have to make each one of these things has to have like a full story arc. So I'm like, I've got to make a whole story arc over her cutting her hair, which who would care, right? It's like, you got your hair. So I literally had to create a story that goes around that. Because nowadays
But
we're
it's
like,
like
oh,
the
you got your hair?
financial
Yeah.
independence and pride and like
Yeah.
all those things.
Which, by the way, if I have to hear "You're one beauty, Joe" another
I
time,
know that.
oh my god!
Even as a young kid, I was like,
That did not age well.
I'd rather have the ability to like write a novel.
Do you know how many
than
times
one
I
or the
wanted a
other,
pixie
but
cut?
Also, that's so rude.
I wanted a pixie cut. My hairdresser talked me out of it because I was prepubescent at the time and had nothing otherwise to show that I was a female.
I got a pixie cut leaving high school, and that was a really hard thing to convince people to be okay with. I was like, it's hair, it grows back. Also, I got tattoos, and this, like, I already have a tattoo, and this is an easier that was an easier conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Even I don't
hair.
remember. I even might not have. There was a backstage I did about a year ago with this story that I'm working on, and it's one of those ones that's just going to take a long time to finish. But I did do a reading of how I changed one of the things that happened in the book Little Women. But if you weren't there, maybe when we do a backstage, I will read that little snippet to you so you can get an idea of how I've changed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I was there actually when you did that
Were
little
you?
bit.
Oh,
I wasn't. Let's go.
I'm happy for it again. But yeah.
oh, okay. So
Okay.
we'll do a backstage one day. I'll
All
let
right,
you
so
guys
do we
a
have
little
the
critiquing.
book
Yes.
covered?
Any other
So-
thoughts on the book before we move on? Ben,
I
go
do want
ahead.
to say we've been talking about the events themselves, but I want to just actually mention the diction and the words, because there were, along with this older style, there were entire monologue conversations or page-long paragraphs again where I had to reread because I was like, nothing really happened here. It was just so difficult to like retain everything in my head with these exceptionally long sentences, with these exceptionally long moments where there's just no break. So that sort of made it much more difficult to read it, at least for me.
And also, I didn't realize Marmee was what they called their mom.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I thought it was a name or something. It threw me off. Like, it wasn't until watching the show or movie that I was like, oh, that's the mom's name, because I was doing audiobook the whole time.
Yeah, it feels like a stepmom or something.
Yeah. It was, I got confused.
Yeah. And then there was a bit of condescending, but I guess that kind of goes with the time. Like the narrator kind of saying to us, it was, as young people like to know how people look, and then it went on to describe each of the sisters.
Yeah.
in the descriptions.
But like that's like definitely of the time, because like that was also in Wuthering Heights and A Lot of Jane Austen and like other things. I think I was reading a lot of like those books at the time. I was just like, I don't know why, I was on a kick. So I think back then it didn't bother me as much, but because haven't read like a classic in a while, if I went into it now, I'd be like, oh my God, like I know I was okay with this when I was younger, but like please have a paragraph break somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, I noticed that's a theme also with Jane Austen. And if I didn't reread the classics regularly, it would be more blaring. But because I tend to read, especially the women of that time, I tend to read them, that I gloss over it until I'm reading something modern. Then I go to theirs and I'm like, oh yeah, that's long, but I am still enjoying it. And then I go back to something modern. I'm like,
it's the juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I see it. So if I could see, especially if you don't read them regularly or all the time, that it'd be like, wow, what were they thinking? But it was great back then. That's what readers wanted back then. Obviously, they were quite popular. And don't be sad, JC. I still really, really like it. Don't be sad.
And there are some wonderful descriptions in there. So I have another one of perilous pitching of her vessels would have produced seasickness in the most nautical observer. Like that is a wonderful description of Amy's art. And I have a bunch of lines like this where the words themselves are like the whole sentence is really, really well done. But it's also just getting through those paragraphs and paragraphs and pages of just.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Eva.
Feels like it's like it's not stream of consciousness, but it feels like just never ending where you
that run on thought. But some of it is quite eloquent, and you're like, there's some good stuff in that long thought. And sometimes you're like, I don't know where you're going with this. You need some commas and some periods.
I'll just stop talking because I'm breaking JC's heart.
We are all holding the
Yeah, I think
handle
we're
of the
all
knife,
freaking
apparently.
for her. I don't think it's just you, Ben.
It's not just you.
Because even though a lot of us are like in the like camp, we've been critical about things. So.
But there is so much to love, and there is still some value in it. Don't worry, it's still good. So
And I think that I mean, you can take any book that was written before, say, like Women's Lib, and probably can find things that you need to break apart, or before like the Civil Rights Movement, that you can find things that you're like, maybe we need to readjust or reevaluate.
Reading Legend of Sleepy Hollow, I took out a sentence because I was not comfortable.
I found the same thing because growing up, one of my favorite books were by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and I'm like, oh, there's some things in there that I did not catch when I was in 4th grade. You know, that I'm like, yikes, how did I just didn't even notice that because I didn't know what they meant. And I'm like, now I do. Oh boy. So yeah, there's sometimes it happens with these older.
I read a lot of things about race in my elementary school as like our forced book club thing, and someone was like asking what the N-word was, and I was like explaining like this is what it was, and the teacher overheard me and like grabbed me, and my mom was like not happy with that. My mom came to the school and was like, you will never like touch my daughter again. And she was also explaining the history of this, and that is not okay to say now. She was doing your job for you because you didn't understand the context of it. And so it was just like, so I read a lot of that and I knew about it because I don't know, I guess my family was just better at educating me than my teachers were, which now that I say that out loud, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the case. But it was if there are certain things that if you're not expecting it from an older time, you're like, oh, right, that was a thing.
Yeah, and most of my elementary school life, I grew up on military bases, and all you heard is everybody bleeds green. We're all green. We're all green. Like, so we're like, okay, we're all the same. And so as I got older and stopped going to like move off a base and stuff like that, that's when I like started learning more things. But bulk of what I learned still in the South. Bulk of what I learned is when I went to college. I was like, whoa, we did not learn any of this stuff when I was in school at all. Wow. My eyes are open. So yeah, very different. So we're going to move on now to the 1994 Little Women. And first, dislikes. Any dislikes? Neutral. Like Ben's a neutral. Okay, want to make sure we got it. Likes.
I'm a like, but more neutral than I am for liking the book.
And love. Okay, and I'm a like to love. Also mostly nostalgic because I read it in middle school, and then this came out in 94, and I was like, it's the adaptation I've been waiting for, so it's all nostalgic. I went back and as rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, it's all right, but I still enjoy it. So that is where I stand with it.
As we've pointed out, even the 1994 version is a remake.
It is.
Yeah. So you wouldn't have that one if they never.
But it was due. It was 50 years. 50 years later from the 1949 version. So we needed to expose the new generation.
My generation was hungry for it. I was like, yes, and thank you. And it had like, of course, everybody in it was just like, that's Winona Ryder. That's Christian Bale. Oh my gosh. Susan Sarandon. So it was star-studded with young people that we were just like, yeah, these are our stars. So
they had so back to what Natalie said earlier though about like an earlier version, they have like a young Amy and an older Amy in the 1994.
Yes, they did that. They switched it.
And with the 4 years later.
4 years later. And I was like, who's this? Oh, that's Amy. Okay. We still don't like her. I know.
I agree, like Amy, but but oh my God, one of my pet peeves with the movies and the show or whatever, my pet peeves is Amy wasn't good enough. And they're showing her work. And I'm like, that's great. She's awesome. What do you mean
I
she's not?
know.
Like, we can't keep this narrative of not good enough. Like, make it where she can't do noses or something.
It's like when it's written and you can't actually see it. Like if you hear everyone saying like, "Oh, it's not good enough," then you're like, "Oh, I guess it wasn't." Like, but then when you see it, you're like, "So what's good enough for you?"
We're gonna get to this, Eva, because there are probably some differences of opinions on which one you should see.
I will have a recommendation.
Yeah. So after we go through all of them, let's give our recommendation on which ones we think will be best. So stay tuned for that, Eva.
It depends how much time you have.
Yeah. So anybody else? What were your thoughts of the night? Who saw the 1994? Did everybody? I think everybody saw the 1994. Okay, so we can all speak on that one. So what did you guys think of the I think I gave my opinion. Like, it was great. What did you guys think of the casting and the acting? Did they look like who you thought that they would look like, sound like, or did they personify what you thought they would?
In some ways, yes. I think that there are. So, like, Kirsten Dunst as young Amy works, but I don't really like her in a lot of the roles. So she kind of worked well as a brat. I did not like Christian Bale as Laurie. He was like leering in every scene. He was a creeper. I think we've officially scared JC Carpenter off. Which I'm really mad about. But like,
don't leave, JC.
The scene
I think she
where
might have actually left.
I think she might have. She loves the 1994 version of the movie.
I know, but so
we had
I
a
felt
whole backstage at the 1994 version.
No, I agree with you, Ben. I'm 100%.
I know. But it just came to a head when he proposes to Joe, and it just felt so icky about it. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. It's, I don't want to give my answer to the question that Just Eva proposed, but it was tough watching Laurie in all these scenes. Like, he's supposed to be this brotherly figure, but he has like this it's Christian Bale. He's intense in every scene, and he just doesn't feel like a brother or anything. He feels like he's going after a goal, and even as a kid, he like knows what he wants from.
It's like he took an
16.
in to like accomplish. It doesn't feel like, which is one of the group, and then it's like, oh, I think I have feelings, and then it's like, I'm not interested in that, and then the fallout of that, where it's, one person had feelings and the other didn't. And one person not only didn't have feelings, but like thoroughly friend zoned the person before any.
Oh, she gave him the Heisman. Like,
before anything could have happened. She was like, oh, this already isn't a possibility. And then he's like, time goes by. And he's like, oh, maybe. And she's like,
maybe now?
I already wrote this off. Like, no.
She's like, I already went from here to there. So you got to move from there.
You got to move on, because I did like a while ago. Like, type of, I don't know.
I feel like that one might be the strongest rebuff of Laurie. In the 1990s.
Yeah, quite possible. I think so. Yeah, thinking back on the Lauries, maybe so. It was just like, I was like, Winona is telling you something. She don't want you, Christian. Sorry. But yeah, it was very much that, like, their acting was, she was just like, no. And he's like, and it's his look, because he has that look about him. I think some of the other Lauries have a bit of a softer look to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was good looking, but also the way that he looks with his eyes, something about it is more
it's
like,
his
hey,
eyebrows
girl, I'm here.
It's a little too intense.
I'm sorry.
But
I still loved it. When it came out in 94, I was still like, I love this because I've wanted it for so long. So
he plays a great American
Christian
Psycho.
Bale as anybody other than American Psycho anyway.
Yeah,
or Batman
that he does. So
like, okay, so I saw him as Batman first, and then I saw American Psycho, and I can't watch Batman anymore because I see American Psycho.
Right.
Like, that's. I'm sorry. Like, even when like there was some movie where he like wore a fat suit to play a character, and like because he was playing a historical character or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know it's Christian Bale, so even though he does not look like anything like I'm like, my brain is like,
I
that
actually
was
did
it, that
okay.
was
Like
it.
I forgot who he was, like who the actor was watching Vice. Especially with the just never. I know we're about to go down a tangent, but to me, someone's a BA when they go, I think I might be having a heart attack. We should probably go to the hospital. Like just calm, cool, and collected. I'm like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Okay. But this movie, I was going to say, for casting, world building was good. I thought everything was like on point. I enjoyed the costumes and stuff, especially when the girls were pretending to be boys, and then the hesitancy, the scene. I thought it was a very lovely scene, even in the book, of like, hey, Joe's like, hey, let's bring a fourth person. Then she's like, oh, by the way, he's been hiding in the cupboard the whole time. Like everything, like it fit, it worked. Joe's hair, and then I'm glad that they had Joe's hair grow after she cut it and such. But I felt it was good. There was character, like good characters. Even the aunt, Hannah, the kittens. I was really afraid actually somebody would like drop the kittens, because working with the animals on set is annoying, because you can't control them, especially kittens. Right. But luckily they never did. And I never noticed a bad editing, at least, but I wasn't that fixated on the kittens. But I thought the acting was good. I agree with the Christian Bale sentiment. And I was glad they actually did change Amy, because I was like, when I initially saw it, I was like, please don't have the same actress this whole time.
Yeah,
please
that would
don't.
never. I would have been like, nope.
Yeah, like I can't suspend disbelief that much.
Young.
Yeah, there's only so far you can go. For me, I think the 1994 version did a really good job of like every actor being their character, but they're like not running ahead to the other adaptations. But like I didn't feel as much of a like they're all close with each other as I had gotten from the book. Like it felt more like these are all the heroes in their own stories, but because they're all related or interacting with each other, like they're there. If that makes sense.
Oh, completely. Like that summarizes. I know exactly what you mean. I'm like, oh, that's the missing piece.
Yeah. We'll see. For this version, I think it had, aside from Lori just being way too freaking intense. I feel like it had almost everything else.
Christian Bale, that worked when he went off to college and they're like, oh, you're always flirting with all these guys, and he shows up and these girls are like clinging on him. Like, yeah, that makes sense. There it is right there. So,
but I also think, to Natalie's point earlier with the book, where she was saying that because it's from Joe's perspective, like everything's kind of like in Joe's world. That's one other thing I do think the movies do a great adaptation of, is trying to give space for each character to have their own story. And maybe that's where the 1994 version kind of separated them almost a little too much.
Yeah, I just think they gave them too much space. I was like, I need to know that like you're a family and you have separate interests and things like that. Like there wasn't enough separation for Natalie in the book, and in this movie there was like too much separation for me. I was like,
did anyone else feel in the movie, the 1994 version at least, that they forgot about Beth? Because like
I can see that.
There was such a great focus on everyone else, and then just Beth kind of petered out in terms of her story. And yes, I know, she dies, but whatever.
Yeah, but like, we didn't get her feelings. It was like,
it's like you need her to be there, so you feel her absence when she's no longer there. And there were times where it just kind of was like, oh yeah, she's somewhere.
Yeah, and there's the whole thing about her building up her confidence, but then they never really played through, at least in this version. Like this version, I think, had the weakest Beth.
Yeah, I think it had a really strong Joe, and I think it also had a pretty strong mom. The mom's I think actually she was great.
Wow.
There was one more thought I had about it. Oh, I did want to say.
Well, wait, Mrs. March was Susan Sarandon, so like, yes, very strong.
Yes, like when.
She can be intense and strong. She can be intense and strong and still soft, whereas Christian Bale couldn't.
a fantasy league, I definitely would take Susan Sarandon, and she'd be the mom in like all the different ones.
Yeah. And that's no shade to the other moms. They were really good. There were some really good moms, especially in the next one we're going to talk about. But Susan Sarandon just knocked it out of the ballpark. She was great. And I will say, if you look on Amazon, the ratings, I meant to check the IMDb, but I forgot. This is the only one that's got a full 5-star review. The other ones are 4.5. So still excellent, but 1994.
I have the IMDb. Okay, so for 1994, IMDb says 7.3 out of 10 from 59,000 ratings. And then the 2018 one, I was on the cast page, so I need to like go back a few and find it.
Yeah, so sorry, while you do that, fun fact, on Halloween, I watched Rocky Horror Picture Show, which stars Susan Sarandon, and she has just such a wonderful range. Like, she can go from fun, goofy cult classic to like serious, intense Civil War family drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, like, she's been in so many, because when I think of her, I think of Stepmom with Julia Roberts. And that, and of course, is a serious role.
Yes.
Yeah, that one too.
Okay, 2018 on IMDb is 5.3, and 2019 was 7.8. So actually higher than the 1994 on IMDb.
Wow. But man, they did a little crucifixion on the PBS version, which we're going to talk about next.
Yes, please.
Let's
PBS came out for the 150th anniversary of it.
Okay, so raise your hand if you saw the PBS version, so we know who's rating. Okay, so that's top 3. All right, who was a dislike? Neutral. Like? Yes, I'm a like also. All right, so I'm going to start by saying it was surprisingly well done for a PBS version of and it got 3 episodes. I like the way that it was shot. It was newer. Of course, I'm going to say it wasn't Susan Sarandon's and Winona Ryder's. Like, that's mine. I love it to pieces, but it was still really well done. I liked the close shots. And there's nothing you can do. You can't change that. 1994, filming was what it was.
Wait, hold up. I'm sorry. Lucas Grabeel was Laurie?
Yes.
I have to watch this version.
Okay. And he's so adorable. He's so adorable. It's hilarious because I remember when I saw it, I remember thinking, I was like, who does he remind me of? I was like, oh, he reminds me of the prince in The Little Mermaid, the cartoon prince. It's just what he looks like. Ironically, they cast him as that for the upcoming Mermaid live action.
Wait, serious?
I think so. I think that's him. I'm like, but that's just the look that he had. Anyway, that was my thought when I first saw
Prince Eric.
Yes, Prince Eric. So, yeah, that's who is Laurie. He's a much softer Laurie. He didn't have the that leeringness that kind of Christian Bale had.
He could be young. Like, I felt there was a growth of being young and then getting older. And going
he actually
to
felt like a brother figure.
Yeah,
that too.
And I don't want to compare, but when their breakup, I call it a breakup. It wasn't a breakup. It was a rejection. Like, I felt so bad for him. Like, I didn't really feel bad for the Christian Bale version. But, like, he gets on his knees and he's just, like, doubled over. And I'm just like, oh, dude. Sorry.
I honestly, the whole time, I don't think there's been a Laurie rejection I like. Because the whole time I'm like, dude, your emotional intelligence is so low. Yeah, like we need to build this up. Like, it's just, and it's never mind like miscommunication of like assuming the banter was something other than brotherly. Like that can be understood. But once the words are said and you're still fighting it, that's when it's like you're.
Yeah, it's like that moment when it really sinks in that this person does not love you and they're not going to change their mind, and it's just like, yikes,
Yeah.
there it is.
I thought
that sounds painful to watch, but it sounds like it's more than just like the cringe of it. It feels like you could maybe actually pity him in this version.
yeah.
That and
yeah, because it's like almost like he knew but didn't really know. He just thought, oh, it's just gonna, like, you know how you think something's just going to take time because that's just the way that things are. We're so close. We're the bestest of friends. It's just gonna be. So you feel more of that with this one than she said, no, dude, what are you not getting? It was more of a not, because they also played with it a little bit more. So that there were some things that happened where she did not shut it down completely before. So when she's like, before she's like, maybe because I do like you because you are Lori, you're my bestie. But then when she realizes no, and she tells him no, and he realizes, oh snap, she really is like, no, it's like, it's devastating. It's more like that realization is there, and he's just like, oh. So that was probably the better one for that arc, I think. I did like the Joe, and I think I like the professor for this one.
For
and
anyone who's on
okay.
Yeah, Joe is played by Maya Hawke, who is the
Stranger Things.
She's in Stranger Things. She worked at Scoops Ahoy with Steve. What's her name?
Yeah, she's Ethan Hawke and
Uma
Kill
Thurman's-
Bill. Uma Thurman. Thank you, Uma Thurman.
Yeah.
Yes,
I always forget that Uma
She looks
Thurman.
Yeah.
so much like Uma Thurman.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen Stranger Things.
Huh?
I haven't seen Stranger Things.
It's okay.
Well, she's in it.
It's all right.
She's really good.
Yeah.
In it.
But the character she plays in Stranger Things is actually similar to Joe, but she played Joe first, which actually makes sense.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like and I thought it was very well placed, just like how Winona Ryder, also in Stranger Things, played Joe, which is funny.
Yeah.
The degrees of separation here. But I thought it was well cast. I believed the characters. Did they change Amy? I don't think
so.
Yeah,
No,
I think
don't think that they did.
But
IMDb isn't. Oh yeah, they did.
they did. Okay.
There's a young Amy and an older Amy.
It was so slight and everything, but they did well making her, like, it wasn't obviously we didn't catch it completely, but it was a
But maybe
good
that's really
transition.
good casting. Like
Exactly.
when you cast a younger and an older, and you can't totally tell that, like, oh, it actually is a different actor.
Not yet.
Yeah. So the scenes
it
were
was
shot
good.
well, the casting.
You got to see more behind of the other characters. You felt everyone had their own stories, because there wasn't just follow Joe and her interaction with everyone. You got to see
the number of times that we got to see Beth, like, being afraid to go to play the piano was so it made it that made it more, that whole nervousness, her needing to branch out and basically step off the property into somebody else's home, that was more pronounced than it was.
I'm gonna have to see this because
I know.
Yeah,
and there was good banter.
Every time, because
it didn't do that.
Yeah, it's so
We'll play this right
muted.
here.
It's so muted in the 94 one that every time that they did it, I was like, oh, is this the time she's gonna go? And it wasn't. I was like, oh, she's really struggling here. I didn't realize how, like, you read it, but there's so much to read. It's like so long when you read it. And I still enjoyed the book. I'm not saying that I didn't, but
they did better with the banter, in my opinion, because, like, Beth started playing something to make Amy feel better or somebody feel better. And I think it was Joe was like, really? You're going to play that song? Like, that was the banter.
It's just like, it's mom and dad's favorite. It's mommy and dad's favorite.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh my goodness. So yeah, there was a little bit more even conflict there, just showing how the siblings will nitpick a little bit with each other. So yeah, that I thought that was better in some ways. Ben, what were your thoughts on the PBS version?
I was going to say that of all 3 versions that I've read or watched, the PBS version includes my favorite possible moment. I don't really want to spoil it, but it's just in preparation to the wedding. Like, there's this wonderful scene of seeing all 4 sisters together, and then Marmee comes in, and it just felt like they were such a perfect
Angela
together.
Lansbury as Aunt Mark. It was like there was more depth there and stuff, and it actually covered a little bit more. And even they showed Amy being a little more selfish, like going through her jewelry and go, when she dies, I hope I get this. Oh, easy, child.
Yeah. And I think that's something that you can do when you have 3 episodes to get something done versus trying to cram it all in.
I mean, 3 hours, really.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that much longer than the movie. Like, sure, there's an extra 40 minutes, but yeah. But yeah, that, I mean, hands down, if you're going to watch the PBS scene, like, that was just wonderful. And then watching Marmee after she closes the door, like, that is 100% fantastic acting.
Yeah. It's on Amazon Prime, by the way. Free.
Yeah. Was it the part where Beth tells her that she's going to die? And Marmee goes, that one?
So.
That
No, this is just before the wedding where it's all 4 of the girls dancing together.
Okay. Yeah. There's another scene that I forget what the actress's name is. She's excellent as well, where Beth is like, I got to tell, will you be there with me to tell them that I'm actually dying? Because she already knew she was dying and everybody else was kind of in denial. And so there is a scene this longer, more explained scene about how much Marmee and Joe are alike, and how she never, we get this scene in other places that she's never saw Beth growing up, but it's just, you get a little bit more with her in this. And I think the actress did an excellent job with that one. When she just comes to the realization that Beth is actually dying, and that, there's nothing that she can do. She can't protect her. She can't stop it from happening. And Beth had to say it out loud for her for it to click that this is really going to happen. So yeah, I felt like we got more depth with a lot of the scenes than we were able to get with either one of the movies. All right, let's do our dislike. Okay, so first, who saw the 2019? Okay, I saw the 2019, so it's us 3 this time. Dislike, neutral, like, and love. I'm a neutral to like, and I will say the order of it, and I'm not saying because it tried to make me like Amy more, but the order in which it was told is, in my opinion, this was more favorable to Amy, and particularly the Amy Laurie romance, because you're not starting off the bat with what's going on with Joe and Laurie, where you get this long friendship with Joe and Laurie, and then all of a sudden Laurie likes Amy. So the order, they tell it in a different order, which I think for the newer generation, maybe they'll like that. And for me, I'm like, it felt a little bit like they were trying to make the new generation like Amy a little bit more, and just the out of order was confusing at times. I'm gonna mute because he's about to bark.
I think Greta Gerwig had said in interviews or something that like Amy didn't deserve all the hate that she's gotten over the years, so she tried to make Amy more likable in this movie.
Well, also, this is the only one where Amy doesn't start off as a kid.
Yeah, that too.
Like they did age up them so that maybe you lose a little bit of
the creep factor.
Laurie kind of watching her
the 11-year-old little sister.
Then, getting older and everything like that. So
I feel like this movie was kind of like the Joe and Amy show. So like I don't feel like we got enough of the other siblings. Like, even though, like, yeah, you saw Emma Watson and you saw, the mom, who I do like the mom in this one. And I did feel like there was more of a family connection than in the 1994 version. Honestly, based on what you all said about the 2018 version, that might become my favorite once I've seen it. But you
better circle back with us and let us know.
Yeah, I will. But like, I like this version because, first of all, like, it's the most modern, and that and I liked how modern, not the writing style, but like the aspirations that Joe had in the book, like that's what made me love the book initially. And it felt like, even though it was still set in a time that's not modern to us, it had the modern sensibility that we hope for in a lot of things now. So I think that was a good combo. And I like that the way they did the end of like showing like, this is the ending that the publisher wants. And then this is like, I thought that was cool. That was a meta moment that I liked.
See, I almost verge on neutral because I think they almost tried to make it a little too modern. Not that I don't appreciate the upgrades or the fact that we brought it more into this generation where women can see it a little bit more like, oh, I can relate to this character, maybe more so than like someone who's born in, 2001 or 2010 would to, the original story. But I almost felt like there was a little bit of the classic that was kind of missing there for me.
Yeah, I do think they went a little too far.
I relate to the classic, but yeah, it just felt like there was a little bit there that could have been a little bit pulled back.
There were times where it went a little bit too modern. I do agree. It wasn't like a uniformly like, I like this change. The professor was good.
Yeah. That was, I think that was a good
like,
change, that he didn't seem like this really, really old guy. Like in the 94 version, it's just like, I was like, whoa.
Oh, it was like
digging that knife deeper.
A lot older.
Yeah, I know. Like in this one, like, yes, he's older, but it's not like, okay.
Because
not old enough to be the daughter.
I agree with Greta. I think Amy gets a little bit too much hate. So I did appreciate the newer aspects to Amy. I appreciate the newer aspects to her and Laurie. I also think it gave their relationship maybe a little bit more depth. It didn't make it make sense so much, but it did give it a little bit more like, oh, okay, I can see where this would kind of transition a touch easier.
Yeah.
I feel
I do feel like it made Amy and Laurie make more sense, because when you take Joe out of the picture, they actually are the two that actually seem to have more in common and fit together.
And
when
they have
Joe's out of the
time.
picture.
they have time together, and you can, I like that.
That's like, I see it now. Okay.
I will say, when the entire family gets back together after Amy and Laurie have gotten together, I felt like Timothée Chalamet kind of played it as like, see how happy I am with your sister? This could have been you. And like, I wasn't a fan of that. I was like, no, you're like, the ship has sailed. You're supposed to be happy in this situation. If anything, the readers and audience weren't happy about this situation. Like, it just felt weird. It felt like a step backwards, especially after we actually saw his relationship grow with Amy in this version. And I don't know. That was something that bothered me.
Yeah, I totally felt that. And it's funny because after I saw that, and then I wanted to go back and refresh on the other two versions because I had already seen them before. I was like, I remember thinking, how was this in the other ones? And just going back to look at those scenes, I'm like, was he kind of like shading her in the other season? I don't feel like he was. The other ones, it was almost like he was like, I want to make sure that we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like
genuinely.
Though I will say, in the 2019 version, there was a line that he said that I was just like, it just didn't seem genuine. But it was, I always knew I was supposed to be a part of the March family. I just didn't know.
Yeah, that
how.
made me cringe.
And I was
like, I was like, oh,
like no, because then that's like Taylor Swift blank space is like, just fill in whichever sister works so you can be a part of the family.
Well, that's also how Mrs. Bennet was acting with her daughters to marry off to Mr. Collins. And I'm like,
yeah,
no, ick.
Yep, because then it's like, oh, if Beth hadn't died, maybe it could have been her. Or if Meg hadn't married the other dude, maybe she could have been rich with me. Like,
it just felt really struggling. Cool.
So at least with Meg, they had a scene where it's like, oh, you could marry Laurie to be rich or whatever, because she goes off to be with her, not friends, but she goes off to like the high society, and they're making those comments for her, and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. So I did like that they had that scene in there of saying, I don't want to marry Lori because then everyone will assume that I'm doing it for money, and I want to try and find somebody who is a good match for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, the 2019 version, it definitely cinematically did bring it up to par in that sense. I think the 2018 from PBS did pretty, like I said, they did really good for it being a PBS and not a really high budget movie. That I thought that they did a good job too.
Like,
Some of
it's
the
on
scenes
par
you
with the
could
high
tell-
budgets. I wouldn't even say for PBS. Like, they did
Yeah,
good. in
it
my
looked
opinion.
yeah, it looked good. It really looked good. But then if you go and see the 2019, you'll be able to like, okay, it's a little bit cinematically better, but still it was excellent. So cinematically it looked good. It was a little, some of the modern, I'm gonna agree, was a bit too much for me. I had the same issue with the newest Emma.
Okay, that
I haven't seen it.
the
Yeah.
newest Persuasion
No.
is a dumpster fire. Let's just throw that out there. Like, Emma was
Oh,
I haven't
yeah.
seen
better
that
than
yet,
the
but we
Persuasion.
already did a show on Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already
We'll go
did Emma.
with that.
Persuasion, I have thoughts.
Gwyneth Paltrow
made
Emma
choices,
for me
but we'll
is
get to
like
that.
the 1994 version of Little Women for JC.
Yeah,
Like, I was
same.
just like, I can't make myself do it.
Yeah.
No, I also
Same.
really like the Gwyneth Paltrow Emma. Not the point.
Yeah. So sometimes when these movies when we have ours and then they make the one for the next generation, you're like, it does feel like, but ours was so good. And then you see some of the things that they get the better picture, they get the better lighting. Everything is crisper and cleaner. And it's like, why wasn't mine like this? Because yours was done in the 90s. That's why yours
But it's like, I'll watch the like Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice one, which was my cousin's favorite, and then like
I love it.
the 2005 one, which is like my favorite. And it's not because, like, you know, things change and I can be like, yes, this did this better and this did this better, but also this one's still my favorite because.
Mhm.
Yep. So I feel like, especially with actors like Timothy and what's her name, Pugh?
Florence
Pugh.
Pugh, Saoirse
Florence
Ronan,
Pugh. It's
Emma
their generation
Watson.
of people. Yeah, Emma Watson. It's definitely Emma Watson. They, like, my daughter's like, oh yeah, we'll watch the one with Emma. You know, it's their people, so they're gonna gravitate, and it's gonna, you know, get those high stars.
I also felt like they were sisterly and snipey enough, and like individual enough, but we only really saw Amy and Joe be individual. But like, I could imagine that back home, like, other things were happening. But I would have liked to see it, like you're saying, apparently happened in the PBS version.
Yeah, and I think in this version, is this the one? Because I saw this one a year ago. I was gonna rewatch it, but then I was like, do I want to pay for it again? And, you know, but I believe in this one, when Meg goes to the ball, doesn't he like insult her? Like,
Yes.
this was the one. I'm like, Timothy, what are you doing? Yeah,
I know there are certain things that they did with Lori, and I'm like,
yeah.
He's like, I don't like the way you look and all this stuff. And I'm just like,
yeah, there are just certain times where they had Lori say things, and I'm like, are you trying to make us like him less so that when he doesn't end up with Joe, we're okay?
We're okay
But
with
also,
it?
you'd want us to like him enough that we're okay with him
Him being
ending
with
up with a
Amy?
better liked Amy. So
yeah.
Well,
So
but
I
also
feel like they were trying to take Lori down a few pegs and lift Amy up a few pegs to balance them out. Like I said, this is the one where I was like, oh yeah,
I know,
can
but
see
that
them together
wasn't where you
totally.
should be taking Lori down a peg.
But I feel like, okay,
But
like
it's
if
the
you
same
look
thing
at
Amy would do. Amy would do a little dig on the way that the sisters look. It's what Amy
Yeah,
would do.
but that's her sister. Like,
Well,
it would
Lori's
make
like
sense
their
for Amy
brother,
to do
so.
it.
but I feel like, okay, if you look at a lot of this generation's like teenage male leads, there's a little toxic masculinity, some toxic relationships going on, like
A
some
little.
different things happen. I
Yeah.
know. I was trying to be
I'm like,
nice.
you're being way too generous.
I was trying to be nice, but I think that's where they were trying to go with Lori, is
And that the
make
young
it a
people
little
can
bit
relate with
more
that.
like something that you would see in some other type of movie
But like
or
that just
genre
felt
or
like a
something
mean
like
comment.
that.
And don't get me started on like After or whatever, which is just like a toxic pit that I refuse to actually step into. But it's like you can have something like be a little bit off color and be like, maybe that came across wrong, or like, oh, that was like a little bit too harsh and like you shouldn't have done that. But like this was just mean. And I was like,
Oh
Yeah. All right. So let's get into, I think we're just going to kind of do it all together. We'll talk about general differences along with what we thought were the best and worst changes throughout the ones that we saw. So who wants to start with some big differences? Go ahead. Go ahead, Natalie.
Okay, so my
And then we'll go to Ben.
differences are tied to the birth of the children. In the 1994 version, Beth died before she could meet Meg's twins, Daisy and Damon, or whatever, her twins. She died before she could meet them, and that really bugged me. And they also left out Amy having a daughter and naming her Beth. 2018 PBS version kept the lineup of like actually meeting the kids and stuff like that, which was good. Which then, because otherwise in the 1994 version, the fact that Beth dies and then Meg doesn't name her daughter, it kind of seems like mean. Almost like you lost your sister and named your daughter Daisy. Why?
Yeah.
Kind of, and it makes Beth look a little bit better. Or not Beth, Amy look a little bit better when she does. But you don't know that. So that's probably why they cut off that. They kept the birth order correctly, and they did better with the epilogue in the PBS version of staying true to that. And I felt that the thing that did bug me, I've already talked about it, was the Amy's art was actually really good, and they kept on calling it not good enough, and I'm like, what the So, yeah, and then I think differences really at a certain point just came down to the depiction of the characters. Like, in the PBS version, I was actually really happy. Like, Joe actually slapped the crap out of Amy.
I love that.
It wasn't just a tussle. It was like, you. Like, and I was like, thank you. Okay, finally, show some anger.
They do that in 2019 too. They get scrappy.
Yeah, like they talk about Joe's anger, and I'm like, she yells. Okay, but then I'm like, oh no, we need to get that anger in check, sweetie, and stuff. So there was a few differences in that, and the and the PBS version I felt did better, showing Amy and the tutor, Colin, or whatever. They showed, not Amy, Meg and the tutor, that showed their build a little bit better than was done previously. So there was a few changes, but like my biggest gripe is like the naming of the children, that remembrance and stuff. And and I will say, I will give this against the PBS version. It was the mom's idea to make the Plum House a school. I was like, what? No, it was an intrinsic goal the whole time, like that was talked about. It wasn't just the mom going, oh, well, this would make a nice school, and then like the kids latching onto that going, yeah, that sounds great. So there's a few changes. Like when you change whose idea it was, instead of making it this like lifelong goal, it's annoying. So I think that's all I have to say about that off the top of my head.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I had the same thing written down for worst change because it takes that agency away from Joe. I did like in the 1994 version how it gave more agency to the sisters. When we're starting off at the beginning, how it's Christmas morning, they're the ones that decide to donate their food to the poor family that their mother's helping, as opposed to every other version where their mother comes in and is like, you guys are hungry, you're all hungry, but we're going to have to donate this to a family that is worse off than us. And having that moment makes them all seem much more compassionate, makes them seem a lot less selfish, and sort of shows how each of them react under those conditions, because all of them were obviously hungry, but they saw somebody who was less fortunate than them. So I really did like that as my best possible change.
Tiffany, from the versions you saw, what were the changes you liked and didn't like, or any changes in general that you just thought were interesting?
I think I have two. The first one is in the, what was it, 2019 version, aging of Amy. I think that was a really good character change, and I generally don't like character changes, but I think it gave more of a realism to the later relationships that would develop in the story. And then I think my other one is the connectivity that they showed um, between all the sisters, but still giving them more story arc than the book did. And that's in pretty much just any movie version I've ever seen, not so much in one specific one. So those would be my two things that I say would be the best changes.
How about you, Zara?
I mean, Tiffany basically just said everything I was going to say. So I don't think I really have anything else to add. I guess I like the end because it was like a wink at the audience. Like if you knew the story behind the book of, she had to write this ending and things like that. I think that was a cool thing.
Yeah, I would say even though the newest one was not my favorite, that part I really, really liked because of I love that part of Louisa May Alcott's story, her life story, so that nod was just like chef's kiss to me. I'm like, the rest of it, the way that they flip-flopped the story, I didn't care for. Like I said, tell it like it is and then let everybody suss out how they feel about Amy and Joe's relationship and Amy and Laurie's relationship the way it should be. Play it out right. Let everybody make their decision. But when you mess with it like that, I'm like, of course everybody's gonna think that. Even I think that, Amy. And
I was okay with that change, but the 2019 is like not my favorite. I don't think I have a favorite adaptation, but I think once I see the 2019, that will change.
And I think I could see why some people thought it was a little bit more confusing to watch it in that kind of jagged order, like what's going on here? Why this? Oh, and then you find out later, is that why? But if you'd have seen it in order, you'd know that yes, this is why this would, especially with the Amy and Joe dynamic of why. So yeah, that would be my best change, and my worst change is in the one that's my least favorite. So I'm trying to think where yeah, because the 1994 I pretty much liked it. There were things that I think I wish that they had added in or expanded on in the 1994 one, but again, movie, you're not going to get everything. And the PBS version, I think that they did a fine job of really laying out the stories. Like I said, there's not like, they don't have big story, like there's not a lot going on. So I think that they did a fine job of laying it out the way that it was. So it was good. So those are my thoughts. Anybody else final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
I think that for me with the PBS version, a lot of the events clicked. So after having read the book and been like, this scene is just taking forever to get through, blah, 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 whatever. Watching the PBS version, I was like, oh, that's what they were going for here. That's why this is important. That's why it means so much to the sisters. So yeah, I really like the PBS version.
Yeah. I think
when's the first time? I have a question. When's the first time that you read it, Ben? Was this your first time reading it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
For me, I think one thing that I'm glad for, because they talk about when you start a movie, start a book, or whatever, you got to grab your audience and let them know how hard things are. And I feel like the opening of, never mind how they ended up donating the food, but that they were hungry. They were like, let's give our food. They gave our food. And then someone blessed them. This like idea of karma and stuff. Like I thought that's a great opening. And I'm glad nobody changed that in the sense of it being done. Now whose idea was, that's a different thing, but it being done. And I feel that sets, the setting of the place and what they're going through, their struggles and stuff. Yeah. And so I think it was very well done as a first chapter, we'll call it.
Yeah. And I feel like that as a storytelling, as a way to do the narrative, it really endures you not only to Marmee and the girls, but also bringing in Laurie, that Laurie and his grandfather who you think, karma and whatnot, you do something good, you don't necessarily expect something back, but you hope that you get, and just saying, you never know if you do something good, when something good might, because they weren't expecting anything good.
Yeah, and
They
you
were
know
just gonna
that
come home hungry.
Lori liked Joe just by her going, "Oh yeah, this is what we're doing," and he goes, "Oh okay," and then immediately talks to his grandfather and makes it happen just by talking with Joe. So like you can tell he's already enamored by her.
And that's part of what made him like her so much. Loki, can we not talk to the neighbors? They can't hear you. He saw her generosity, and that's what started the whole thing. Sorry, anybody else? Any final thoughts?
I feel like I've been saying mine throughout the rest of the show, so like I'm good.
Nothing.
Okay, so we are good. All right. Anybody else? That's it. Loki is about to like go wild in here. I'm trying to
Okay, well then I guess I'll do my outro. So also if in case he keeps on barking, we will be doing How the Grinch Stole Christmas and all the versions. Yes, in December. Then January is Fire and Bloods / House of the Dragon. So you got plenty of time, hopefully, to get through that. You just to let you know, in case you get an audiobook, there is a custom bar on Audible where you can go faster than 2 times speed if you can keep up. I think I've gone faster than 2 times once. It always depends on the narrator. But for outros, I'm Natalie Locke. I will be live on Twitch tonight at 7, going through another flash fiction. This is episode 191. We are down to single digits, counting down to the 200th prompt out of this book that is starting to show its wear and tear a little bit. And then once that's done, taking like a 3-week break and then going through and editing it one by one to eventually become a book. We'll see. Compilation. I don't know. It's still work in progress. We're fine. So find me as Natalie Locke or Writer Locke, and my kid's downstairs playing roadblocks. Otherwise, he would be pestering me right now. So
yeah, I literally had to kick Loki out. I'm like, we'll play in a minute. Ben, let everybody know all the things you have coming up.
Yep. I am Ben Pick, Rain to Write. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be running a productivity sprint, followed by, included in that will be a cover reveal for my second book. You can pre-order it right now. So all the information I'll be going through tomorrow night. And scripting the book, on the 15th, we will be having an interview, or we'll be airing the interview with Chris Kenny. So come join the fun. I believe it's going to be at noon Eastern Time. I should probably know this. Noon Eastern Time, yeah.
And what's the show again?
Sorry,
not
thank you, Natalie. Not scripting the book. It is the self-publishing tips and tricks show.
Sorry, I didn't want to be that person, but at the same time, I wanted to be that person.
That's why I took down the banner. I was like, wait a second, this is confusing.
Thank you. With SD Houston and Morgan Lee.
Excellent. And Tiffany, where are we hanging out later? Let everybody know.
We're hanging out on my channel. We're gonna, have birthday fun and talk movies.
Trivia.
Yes. So there might be a bingo card. Who knows? But come hang out with us. 5:00 Central, 6:00 Eastern. On my channel, and then on Thursday we will be doing PJs and Scribbles, where we'll be doing live sprints to keep us productive for Nano. And as always, you can check out my Kindle Vella. Come find her.
Right, Zara.
I'm the self-published author of 7 books. I only have 6 in my hand. A young adult paranormal romance trilogy. The first 2 books are audiobooks. Then a new adult sci-fi romance trilogy and a standalone young adult dystopian romance trilogy. I am one half of the Writers Podcast, where we talk about all things writing related, from shining new idea through publication and marketing, no matter what track you're on, whether it be self, indie, or traditional. And lastly, I am the founder of Inimitable Books, LLC, a small publishing company dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices without pigeonholing authors into writing about their trauma.
Awesome. And I'm Natalie, Vixen Of Fiction. You are here on my channel. I will be streaming every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, so you can come hang out with us to do some writing sprints. Like I said, next month we will be doing How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It's a short read, but a couple of fun movies. So come join us for that. Get in the holiday spirit. And then because we have a short read in December, you've got plenty of time to make your way through Fire and Blood and watch House of the Dragon, so we can talk about that in January. I will also be doing lunchtime sprints at 12 p.m. Sporadically, you can catch those, but definitely be doing one this coming up Friday. And I write things, I do things. I'm a Loki mom and a mom of 4, so come hang out, join the chaos. It's fun. We do stuff. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really enjoy talking about this. This is one of my childhood favorite books. So I was so glad that you guys wanted to do this one and we got to talk about it and suss through and scare JC away. I'm so sorry. But it was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoy all of the movies. So I love to talk about it. And yeah, follow these guys if you like the stream, and then go down, find everybody's links, subscribe, find their Ko-fis, do all the things. These are amazing people. We're trying to do awesome things with our writing, and Zara with the writing and publishing. So we would really appreciate show us some love. The easiest way to do that is to subscribe to our channels. Yeah, so I appreciate you all. And we're going to all wave and say, oh, let me get rid of that banner real quick. Because I always forget. But yeah, come join us again in December and January. And thank you guys. Have a great one. We'll see you next time. Bye.